I was 17 when my world collapsed. It started with fatigue that wouldn't go away, bruises that appeared without cause, and pain deep in my bones that made even walking a struggle. I told my parents something was wrong. At first, they brushed it off. They said I was just trying to skip school, looking for attention because my younger brother Samir was always the center of everything. He was the shining star, the straight, a student, the athlete, the one who made them proud. I was the quiet one, the moody one, the disappointment, so when I kept complaining, they grew irritated. I begged them to take me to a doctor, and when they finally did, the results hit like a hammer. Leukemia, late stage, aggressive, the doctors said there was hope, but only if I started treatment immediately. Chemo, transfusions, constant monitoring. It wouldn't be easy, but it was possible. I remember sitting in the doctor's office, staring at the floor as he explained the plan to my parents. My mother didn't cry. My father didn't ask questions. They just sat there, silent. When we got home, they didn't say much either. That night, I overheard them whispering in the kitchen talking about money, Samir's future, their savings, how expensive treatment would be. I wasn't their investment, Samir was. I think that's the moment something in me broke. The next morning, they told me I'd be transferred to a government hospital, not the private one where the doctor worked, but one for those who can't afford options. They didn't even ask me how I felt about it. They just packed my clothes into a small bag, dropped me at the hospital gates, and drove off. No hugs, no promises, no visits, just the sound of the car fading into the distance. I was 17, scared, and battling a death sentence completely alone. I waited for days, hoping they'd return. I thought maybe they'd come after thinking it through. Maybe they just needed time to process it all. But days turned into weeks. My treatment started. My hair fell out. My strength left me, and they never came. Not a single call. Not a single visit. The hospital discharged me with nothing but a folder of medical papers and a plastic bag holding the clothes I had come in with. I was weak, pale, barely able to walk, but I was alive. That alone felt like a miracle. I had nowhere to go, no home waiting for me, no one to call. I ended up at a shelter for a few nights, surrounded by people society had thrown away. I ate what was given to me, slept in crowded rooms, and used the corner of a public library to keep myself warm and distracted. I didn't cry. I couldn't. I was too numb, too used to being invisible. Eventually, I found work at a roadside restaurant washing dishes. The pay was next to nothing, but it gave me just enough to afford a bed in a shared apartment with 6 other men. Every night, I'd collapse into that bunk and stare at the ceiling, wondering why I was still alive. But something inside me refused to die. Even after everything, I wanted to matter. I wanted to build something of my own. During my breaks at work, I'd steal moments to read books management, finance, entrepreneurship. I didn't fully understand them at first, but I kept reading. I was determined to find a way out. That's when I met Mr. Yusuf. He was an old man with tired eyes and a dusty printing shop down the street. He noticed me standing outside during my lunch breaks with a book in hand. One day, he waved me in and asked what I was reading. I told him honestly I wanted to start a business someday. I thought he'd laugh, but he didn't. Instead, he offered me a job. It paid slightly better than dishwashing, but the real value was in what he taught me. Every day after closing, he'd sit with me and explain how he handled clients, how he managed supplies, how he built the place from nothing. He taught me about margins, costs, marketing, all of it. I soaked it up like a sponge. Slowly, the shop began to grow again. I brought in new ideas, helped design logos, made deliveries. I became more than an employee. I became his right hand. For the first time, I felt like someone saw me as capable, as worthy. It was a quiet Wednesday morning when they returned. I was in my office, sipping tea, reviewing contracts for the land a major tech company was offering to buy. Life had become stable, structured. I had staff now, a home of my own, a future I controlled. That's when my receptionist buzzed in and said there were 3 people asking for me, a man, a woman, and a young doctor in a designer suit. My stomach dropped before I even stood up. I knew. I walked out and there they were. My parents, Samir. My father's hair had thinned. My mother looked older. and Samir looked exactly as I expected, polished, confident, and utterly clueless about the pain he represented. My mother was the first to cry. She ran to hug me. I didn't move. My father followed with an awkward smile, arms half open, unsure of what to say. Samir walked in like he belonged, commenting on how well I'd done for myself, how proud he was to see me alive. Not one of them apologized, not one acknowledged what they had done. Instead, they spoke in circles. "We thought you didn't make it," my father said, as if I had vanished instead of being discarded. "We tried to find you." My mother lied, her eyes flicking toward the gold watch on my wrist. Samir smiled too much, talked too much, called me bro, like nothing had happened. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just watched them, studied them like strangers in a play. Over the next week, they kept showing up, dropping by my office with gifts, bringing food to my house, calling late at night, pretending we were close, pretending the years of silence didn't exist. But I saw through it all. I saw how Samir stared at the signed contracts on my desk, how my father asked casual questions about the business, how my mother lingered too long near the land documents on my shelf, and then it came. My father, over dinner, brought it up with a rehearsed sigh. "We've been thinking, maybe we should put the property in the family name now. You know, for protection, for legacy." My hands didn't shake. My face didn't twitch. I just smiled, because now I knew everything I needed to know. After that dinner, I went silent. I stopped answering their calls. I told my assistant not to let them into the building. I watched from behind tinted glass as they came and went, confused, pacing, whispering to each other like vultures circling a carcass they thought was already theirs. But I wasn't theirs, not anymore. Over the next few days, I made my moves quietly, methodically. I contacted the real estate agents, finalized the sale of the land, and closed out the business accounts. The tech company's deal went through, and just like that, every brick and beam my family had salivated over was gone. I wired the money, all of it, into a newly created foundation under someone else's name, a scholarship fund for children with terminal illnesses and no family support. Kids like I had once been, kids abandoned and left to rot. I made sure every rupee went there. Not a single coin would ever reach my parents or Samir. Once the sales were finalized, I walked through the empty office one last time. I touched the worn desk where I had once collapsed in exhaustion, the window that used to leak when it rained, the door Mr. Yusuf once walked through with tea in his hand. Then I locked it for the last time. I didn't tell a soul where I was going. I left behind no trace. Only one thing remained: a letter. A single envelope, sealed with a red wax stamp, handed to my lawyer with strict instructions to deliver it to my family during their next scheduled meeting. The meeting was set for Monday morning. My parents arrived dressed in their best clothes, Samir in a new suit, all smiles and hungry eyes. My lawyer greeted them, handed them the envelope, and said nothing. They opened it expecting paperwork, maybe a deed or trust papers. Instead, they found my handwriting, plain, sharp, unforgiving. I told them I knew everything, that I remembered every second they left me to die, that I saw through their lies and greed. I didn't write with anger, just clarity. I told them the wealth was gone, donated, the business sold, the land no longer ours. I told them they wouldn't find me again, because I didn't want to be found. They say blood is thicker than water, but sometimes it's poison. My family had every chance to love me, to stand by me, to show me even a shred of humanity when I needed it most. Instead, they chose convenience, they chose silence, they chose to bury me before I was even gone. And when I rose from that grave stronger, wiser, unrecognizable, they came back not to celebrate my survival, but to rob it. But what they didn't realize was that I had already buried them in my heart long ago. My revenge wasn't loud, it wasn't cruel, it wasn't violent, it was simple. I lived, I thrived, and I made sure that everything they ever wanted slipped through their fingers like dust. They can keep their regret, they can sit in the silence they left me with, and they can wonder, for the rest of their lives, what could have been. But me, I finally have peace, not because I got even, but because I walked away. Without ever looking back,